Well, French presidential candidates Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron met face-to-face this week for what may well have been their final debate. Now, the two won the most votes in the first round of the French election on April 23rd, but neither candidate won more than the 50% plus votes needed for a majority. Now, opinion polls ahead of the final vote Sunday show that Macron, the centrist candidate, is slightly ahead of the ultra-conservative Le Pen right now. VOA's Letizia Hoke has our report.
For Le Pen, the debate was a chance to narrow the 20% gap in the polls that consistently favor her 39-year-old rival. The candidates tackled main campaign themes, including France's growing unemployment rate, security, health policy, and the country's future in the European Union. The 48-year-old Le Pen sought to expose Macron as a representative of the establishment the voters resent.
We have seen the choices you have made during the runoff campaign, choices that are cynical, shameful, and that reveal the coldness of the investment banker.
Macron, a former banker and former Minister of Economy, has portrayed himself as a centrist, representing all the people of France. Macron's aim was to prove that Le Pen's ideas, such as having France exit the European Union, are dangerous for the country.
You are the true successor of the far-right leaders of your party who have fed on the anger of the French people for a very long time. I don't have to talk about your heritage because you've defended it yourself for years.
And for a look now at what this election could mean for the country of France and for the rest of Europe, we're joined on Skype from Paris, France, by VOA European correspondent Luis Ramirez. That's a nice view there, Luis. And right here in Washington by international broadcaster Jane Bojadzievski from our Macedonian service. I thank you both for joining us. But Luis, since you have the best backdrop there, I'll talk to you first. What's the mood in Paris right now as we approach this very crucial second round?
Well, it's certainly one of great anticipation. This is perhaps the most contentious presidential race in France in the history of the Fifth Republic. Two starkly different choices before French voters here. Essentially a choice between globalization, between the economy of the future, between a Europe without borders, and for what many see, a whole different choice of someone who wants to wind back the clock, right, fortify borders, get out of the euro, and make France a more monocultural country. That's certainly the perception of Marine Le Pen.
Right. And Jane, as you heard Luis Ramirez say, this is essentially this is a very critical election for the people of France. But new polls show this. The polls are getting kind of tight, but there appears to be some talk about some kind of a French election boycott. What do you know about that? What can you tell us about that?
Shocking, 14 million French people are planning to hand in a blank.
A blank vote?
Blank vote.
Why?
They feel disenchanted from the state of the French politics, that either far-right Marine Le Pen, anti-migrant, or...
they don't like their choices.
They don't feel that they represent them. They even feel, even further, they compare the both of them like you have to choose between the plague and the cholera, which is too much for me. But this is the first time since 1958 that the major right and left political parties are absent from the second round of the vote. And I want to say that 32% of the French people will not vote. That will be the highest number ever.
If that happens, Jane, I mean, could that sway the election one way or another?
Turnout is very important for Marine Le Pen, especially because the best bet for her is the people who do not vote for Macron in the first round should stay at home on Sunday.
Wow. Luis, I want to get your thoughts on the debate that you saw this week. The New York Times described it as a study in violent verbal combat. I assume it must have been interesting for observers. How did you see it?
Well, talking to people as they watched this debate on Wednesday night, certainly it was very interesting to see. First of all, there was a football match going on at that time.
We seem to have lost Luis Ramirez. We'll try to get Luis Ramirez as quickly as we can for you. But Jane, let me turn to you. What issues do you think are motivating voters right now?
The major issue is it time for Brexit? Because the French 2017 favorite, Emmanuel Macron, he warns European Union that if it's not reform itself, the Paris will follow Britain in a way out of Europe. He's pro-European politicians, that's for sure, that's a fact, but he warns that all French politicians must respect the voice of its own people. According to him, allowing the European Union to carry as it is right now, it will be a betrayal for the French people. So this will be a potential boost for British Prime Minister Theresa May in her Brexit talks against hardliners who do not want to change at all.
Luis Ramirez, I believe we have Luis Ramirez back. You just heard about the comparison there between the French election and the upcoming snap election there in Britain. I guess I should ask you, you don't anticipate as much drama, though, for the June election in Britain. I mean, is there even a chance for the Labour Party here?
Well, the only reason she called this a snap election well before...
Okay, we have a really, really bad connection there. We'll try to get it. It must be because of the beautiful background scene that Luis has there. Some people don't like it. Is Luis back? Luis, I'm sorry, but we seem to have a spotty internet connection of some sort. But please continue your thought there. We were talking about the possibility of the Labour Party actually gaining seats or losing seats. What do you think?
Well, I was in the middle of saying that Theresa May, the only reason she called this election is because she is very confident that the Conservatives will get enough votes to win again a majority and that she will stay on as Prime Minister. She had earlier said that she would never call a snap election. Well, once she was sure that she could win, she did. And so one of the things that she and the Conservatives are banking on is that they very much still enjoy a mandate and that the Labour Party is deeply fractured. I mean, it was just a year ago they suffered what was perhaps, or what's been called, their worst electoral defeat in a century. And
I know you'll be covering that for us, but Yanni, in the amount of time I have, I know Macron has a very starkly different vision of what he thinks Europe ought to be after this election. What does he want from Brussels? Because there is a lot of dissatisfaction with the EU right now. Does Macron want something from Brussels? Is there a warning that he's perhaps issuing to the European Union?
Europe's old order is dying. I think that the established political parties from the left and the right horizon are seeing erosion in support everywhere, regardless who wins this presidency. French establishment will be decisively defeated, like more than American establishment with the President Donald Trump.
Right.
For example, Hillary Clinton won 52% of the vote. As a contrast, the two major political figures in a French establishment have less than 30% of the vote. And let me conclude with this one. If Le Pen win the 7th of May election, it will be the death of the idea of European unity born on the ashes of the World War II.
And it's possibly the reason why we think this election is so consequential. I look forward to your report and as well as you, Luis. Thank you so much. We're going to take another break right now. But when we come back, we're going to talk about U.S. President Trump, who met with the Palestinian leader at the White House. But here's a provocative thought for you. Could the leaders of North Korea and the Philippines be next? But first, a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.